A quick preamble to the Stephen Shellenberger discussion interview, a fabulous, fabulous artist. I'm beginning to have more and more insight as I talk with Stephen and understand what it is that attracted me to what he's doing. And of course, in this interview, you will find out the focus, the concentration of his energy is around the child, children, the vulnerability of children, the abuse of children, the fact that the culture of death has been going on for probably 6,000 years of recorded history, decimating the children population through whatever you want, through what is called now child services. They are not what they're pretending to be. The world is not what it appears to be, as Stephen has said. And what I want to just have a quick preamble. This is a longer interview than I thought. Amazing story. But what I wanted to pass on to you, I'm going to put up a few images. Stephen couldn't send me stuff, so I just pulled it off the net. They're not really that clear in the background as you see it. But what I want to draw attention to is what I believe Stephen has done with his work. And that is when he stitches, this is fabulous, this is phenomenal. I mean, there is probably some stitching going on with other artists, but not in the context that he has done. And when you look, and I didn't really quite see through this, but I understood as I look at the work, what I've realized is that he is recreating it's almost eerie, the skin of the lost children and stitching it together, a fabric. He's creating a fabric from the souls that have left, that have been decimated, that have been abused. He's putting it together. And the reason I believe this to be true about the nature of his work is that the subtlety in the color, what I had not quite understood, this vulnerability in the work, the absolute power in the work through this stitching thing that he does, and the complex association of putting together this work, this discarded work, like the discarded children that we walk over their graves, we walk over their skin that he's stitching together again. The subtlety, it's like beyond Monet, it's beyond this sort of soft coloration. No, it's the vulnerability in this, what he represents. He is physically that what he represents in his day-to-day life. He's making the work, and the work is phenomenal. It's right what I was saying, that between the reason we have Fukushima is because we have allowed children, the most vulnerable among us, to be decimated, to be abused. And the children grow up to create the Fukushimas of the world. So unless we begin to truly love our children, we're sunk. And this is what Stephen's all about.
Multi-dimensional studio.
I want to talk to the father of Mushi.
Oh, yeah. Hang on a second. Let me get him.
Yeah. Is Mushi's father there, please?
Hey, Shellenberger. Shellenberger, phone. I think it's the bill collector now. Oh.
I want to talk. Yeah, this is Mushi, and I think that people will have watched the first video that I did with you talking about being the father of Mushi, so I think they understand.
Yeah, well, I'm the father of Mushiism.
I think it's a brilliant movement that will catch on in the 24th century.
Yeah.
You're going to have to wait a while. You're going to have to come back in another incarnation in order to benefit and be a wealthy billionaire based on the fatherdom of Mushiness.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, so I think we're probably better off getting down to it, because I talked to you a few minutes ago, and do you have any other comments on Da Vinci?
Oh, just that I know he was endorsed from the Vatican, and that Michelangelo was not endorsed. And Michelangelo, most of his art was made, I think, almost with a sense of urgency and desperation, trying to get it out. Whereas Da Vinci, I have reason to believe that Da Vinci was given some secrets from the vaults of the Vatican, and he was endorsed. So he was basically, I guess, a modern day equivalent could be any, celebrity that's endorsed and not struggling and not concerned about being killed or whatever, and so they're able to sort of live in luxury and create.
Like Damien Hirst, the Damien Hirst of the Renaissance.
Yeah. So Michelangelo, though, I was speaking with someone today about men that came back from the Second World War, and there was this, and I just want to say this quickly. My father was in the Second World War, as were lots of my friends' fathers. My father had no paraphernalia. He didn't have Nazi daggers that he collected on a field after killing a bunch of, Germans. Like, my father never spoke about the war, wasn't really interested in any of his medals or any of the stuff he got. I think my dad should have been a beatnik. And I think that the governments in countries like Canada and the U.S., these men came back from the Second World War and they were told to get a wife, have 2.2 kids, get a job, and live in the suburbs in a square box, and watch a square box for your news, and listen to a square box for your music, and then just basically shut the fuck up. And not just my father, I think a lot of men not just drank themselves and smoked themselves to death, but I think they died of broken hearts because they were forced into a situation it was a dream they didn't make. It wasn't, they were forced to buy into something that wasn't really them. And also, I think being killed or on the verge of being killed every day, for a year or two on end, I think it's a heightened awareness that you're living with. And when I relate it to my own life and some of the trauma I went through trying to find out who had threatened my son and suffering surveillance and death threats, there's a part of me that, and maybe like these men from wars, you never feel more alive than when you've only maybe got an hour or a minute left to live. There's a heightened awareness, there's a heightened urgency, everything's heightened, and I think that's another reason that these men felt, there was no help for men in those days, so they had depression issues and stuff, and they couldn't pinpoint it, but some of them actually missed the war, not killing others. It wasn't that they missed, but it was that heightened urgency, and they never felt more alive, or I guess one never feels more alive unless they're right next to death. And I think a lot of Michelangelo's work, he almost had to do it in a vacuum and angle his way around the church and the political structures in Tuscany at the time and all that stuff. So he was constantly, maybe he was creating like it was his last gasp of air.
That's a fabulous analysis. I feel that you've hit something here, and it hasn't changed very much in our present day.
No.
I think that you have what I have referred to as the culture of death has embraced the people that are actually not good for us at all.
Yeah. That's why.
I love that. That's beautiful. I like this. Now, I'd like to, have you got your coffee?
Yeah, I got my coffee.
Yeah, and I've just, I think I have to start another cigar and a scotch, because this is going to be a little bit of even somewhat of a spiritually a traumatic interview with you, because I don't know if maybe you should introduce Stephen Shellenberger. I'm talking to, I should say Stephen Shellenberger, part 2 of the interview. The first is a video, the second is an audio. Did you want to introduce yourself other than the father of Mushi? Do you want to say something else about your introduction first of all?
Yeah, sure, I'll do the intro. My name's Stephen Shellenberger, which in fact isn't my Christian given name. I was never a Shellenberger. I was born Stephen Shellen, but because of things that had happened along the way, I adopted part of what my father's, name was that he changed after the Second World War. His last name was Shellenberger, and he was from a Dutch and a German Mennonite couple. And my father, I guess, because Germans weren't particularly popular, he changed his name or hyphenated it from Shellenberger to Schellen. And then when I went through my harassment and stuff, I went from being the actor-writer guy, Stephen Schellen, to Stephen Shellenberger, the artist. I guess a little bit of it was a tribute to my dad, and just different things. But it's not a huge name change. But there is no Stephen Shellenberger other than this artist character that I've given birth to.
And I would like to add that for people who are interested in your particular history, they can probably find quite a bit of information on the net if they just punch in Google Stephen Shellenberger.
Well, they'll probably get more if they go Stephen Schellen, because that deals with what happened. But I feel like that was another lifetime ago, and it doesn't, that doesn't define me. But it certainly helped push me to be who I am today. And it's funny talking with you, Tom, the last couple of weeks, and making my art. And, we have a tendency to denounce ourselves to others, or I certainly have, and have done that. And it's almost like you're letting other mediocre people feel more comfortable around us, so we sort of piss all over our accomplishments and what we do. And there's a lot of truth in defending our work, because no one else is going to. And, it's the difference between ego and self-esteem. You have to have self-esteem about what you're doing. And I absolutely believe so much in what I'm making and what I'm doing right now. I think it's the most important things I've ever done in my life. Much more important than being in a movie with Brad Pitt, directed by Robert Redford. I mean, that was pleasant and nice. And, it's funny, you get accolades for acting or for being in a film, and it pales in comparison to doing what I consider the real work, which is start to scratch. People like you and myself, we make art. We create art out of nothing. There is no script, there is no director, there is no cinematographer. We're doing it from the inception to the finish.
We're going to talk about that now, because that's the guts of this interview. I call this my title for this video, or for this interview, is Artist of Conscience, Stephen Shellenberger, Art in the Age of Fission. And this is something today, I know you have a cold and you're really pushing yourself to do this, but I pushed you. You said, let's do it another time. And I said, no, I want to do it now, because I've had I'm sitting in my studio now and thinking about you and what it is that you're doing, and trying to make the connections. I did the first interview with my buddy down in Utah, Kevin Blanche, another artist that is dealing with the art of survival. And I think this is what my connection with you is, that I've recognized that the work that you're making is intimately connected to the idea of our survival.
Yeah. I think so too. It is. I don't think so. I know so.
Yes, and I see it, and it's beginning. The images that you create are directly related to this concept. Now, what I want to do now is, I have my own. The way you talk about making art, we talked about it in the first part of it. By the way, did you manage to get a video? Did you see the video of the first part that we did?
No, I haven't got sound in my computer, so I'm living in a vacuum too right now, just like...
Okay, that's okay. That's all. That doesn't matter. You'll see it later, but it's connected to this. It was a preamble to what I believe to be the blood and guts of the interview, actually. And it's good we're doing this on an audio level because there's no distraction. I'm going to put some images of your paintings up in this audio in the YouTube video that I'm going to post. Now, what I want to talk to you about is there is no difference, number one, between making art as a kind of aesthetic thing and the feeling of a blood and guts engagement with the meaning of life. Everything that matters is on the table. It's like you take the risks. So this is not an aesthetic conversation. This is about survival and taking risks. And I think what you have been talking to me about and the work that you've been doing is directly related to the idea of the fact that children are hated by their parents, the population. We see this in the Kevin Annett, another person you've interviewed. I high regard the native residential school catastrophe of children being murdered. This is part of our culture, and I would directly say related to what we're facing now, which is what my concern is directly Fukushima, the destruction of the planet as a whole. So just a preamble, and I'm going to talk to you about your work directly, but I want you to talk about your experience of this fact, that children are hated.
Yeah. Well, 18 years ago, I had come home. I had a farm in Canada, and I was working out of Los Angeles, and I had a farm, a beautiful heritage farm outside of a place called Orangeville. Came home to find bruises on my wife at the time's face, and then my son, who was 4, my daughter was 3, I was not drilling them, but trying to understand what was going on in my absence. And my son told me about men hitting Mummy. And then I noticed cuts on my son's hands, or on his one hand rather, and everything led down to this. I went to Children's Aid and the police were called in, and I thought I was doing all the precautionary, sane measures to try to. I was more concerned because my wife had admitted at that point to being a prostitute, and I was making a lot of money at the time. And there was no need for her to be a prostitute, and I couldn't understand how my children were involved. So I was only concerned when I went to Children's Aid really was with the children and trying to protect them from what could have been a very ugly situation and what they had gone through. And what I found out and what I got in response was I got tracked, followed, death threatened, my children taken, even though I'd hired a lawyer to prevent that. And you're absolutely right. No one will admit it, but there is a hate towards children. I don't know any other way to put it. And I know 99% of people listening, I don't hate children. Well, you sure don't. It doesn't look like anyone's really looking out much for children. These services like Children's Aid and whatnot, it's bogus. They're more involved in abducting, taking children, throwing them in poor pedophile foster care than they are in helping those children. And
like the Jimmy Savile.
When you get into Kevin Annett and what he's revealed, 50% of all Native children taken to residential schools, those children never came home. They didn't go live with another family. They were dead. They would take one child with tuberculosis and throw that child in a room with 4 or 5 other healthy children. All those children would end up dying from tuberculosis. This is what your government of Canada, and this is what these children's services, this is what goes on. So you'll hear the odd native say, residential schools, I got an education and it was good. And they'll hold that person up and put them on all the talk shows and CBC and feature that guy because he's now a lawyer or a doctor. But he's 0.001% of the native population of countries like Canada. What we've done to children is just, and then you unfortunately you look into things such as ritual abuse, which I believe happened to my ex, And she's only a product of her, of her family and what was done to her and generational abuse. And it just, I think this thing has been not nurtured, that's a bad word for it. I think this thing's been propagated against children for centuries, maybe thousands of years, maybe back to Baal. I mean, I don't know, but what we've done to children under the guise of caring for children is so incredibly gross. Anyone that's gone through a divorce and is involved in child support, that child's not getting $2,000 a month to go out and buy what they want. No, it's going to the mother so she can make her Lexus car payment. It's not for the child. They don't care about the children. They don't care about love, which is the most essential ingredient that we have as humans on this planet. But the whole notion of nurturing and loving and allowing these children to have the love of both parents, even though those parents may be divorced, that's never talked about in any court case, any child support case. And it's the most essential ingredient a child could have. I mean, the child needs love, not, the mother's car payment made. So yeah, this hate on for children, people won't admit it, but it's there, and I see it all around me. I see the way my friends, my own family, how ostracized and hated I was, and I just kept, saying that it's like a broken record, saying the same thing. I just want to know who threatened my son, because my 4-year-old son was threatened to be hurt if he talked to his daddy, which is the conversation I had with him. And I took him to a hotel, and I got a tape recording machine, and I recorded my last conversation with my then 4-year-old son, where he's crying, telling me he can't talk to me, his daddy, because someone threatened to hurt him if he talked to his daddy. And that was I made 300 copies of that last conversation with my son, and aside from the original, all 300 copies have been stolen from safety boxes, storages, apartments I'd stayed in, wherever. Somebody had such focus on me that I guess they found it necessary to steal all those copies, which brings me up to present day, which is my children are now adults, and I lost that war, but I see and I look around and speaking with someone like Kevin Annett and finding out about residential schools and other we don't even know what's going on in Iraq with children.
It's dark. It's very dark. It's very dark.
It's so dark. I won't even say in this interview some of the things I know can be done in secret societies, in secret ceremonies, on altars with babies and children. But it is dark beyond dark. Yeah. And if anyone wants to look it up, they can go and research ritual abuse, and they'll. It's Pandora's box, though. So
I think
you open that box, boy.
Well, okay. I think that what you have just talked about is the basis of civilization. So this leads into the context of the interviews that I'm doing based on the idea of art. Where does art originate? There is no point in making art unless it addresses the most important issue that we're facing. And I believe right now we're facing the issue of survival. Fukushima has shown us this, that we're being decimated by the radiation, alpha, beta, gamma isotopes, and it comes out of what exactly you're talking about. And I would put this back to probably Nomer or Namer, the first pharaoh. Akhenaten was the progenitor of the divine right of kings propagated against the population, the holier than thou, the aristocracies that have ruled the planet. And it comes out of this hatred of children that has been we have been subjected to systematic destruction of our psyche by being told we're worthless. And I think it starts when we're children, and you've described this beautifully, perfectly. And
now, I'll just say one thing. Kevin Annett also said something that I thought was great, and you heard it too because we watched it together. when we were talking about, and I mentioned to him, well, aren't you afraid of being killed, or aren't, people are maybe afraid of dying? And he goes, how can people be afraid of dying if they haven't even learned how to live yet?
That's a fabulous line. Yes, yes.
And it's so true, and you're right about how we're being, how we're basically being genocided. And I also want to just add to that we sit our kids in front of TVs and video games, and they play transhumanist games, and this whole ushering in of this cloning, transhumanist, half man, half machine, this has become not just something fantasy for films and video games, but it's actually, in actuality, it's being done. And it's scary to think that this thing I talk about, this LOVE word, and at the exclusion of love, certain people want to have this transhumanist world. And I go to museums and I see the museum collections and what's up on the walls now, today, what they're showing today in a museum is just reflective of this transhumanist, half man, half machine kind of art that you don't feel anything from. It doesn't warrant any response, good, bad, or anything. It's just ice cold. And since when is the art, which is the true historians, because God knows, for millions, thousands of years, their writers write their history. History doesn't mean anything if it's coming out of a book, but history means something if it's coming from the artists. And if that's what our art is going to be, in the museums, it's this transhumanist machine man art that is devoid of anything.
We're going to make a little gift. People who are listening to this, we're going to let them know that they're listening to a couple of geniuses right now. Did I hear you chuckle? No,
I was clearing my throat.
Okay. You're on board with me. This is like, it's as in history that when you look at Vincent, they claim Vincent 50 years, 100 years after he existed, they say, oh yeah, Vincent van Gogh, oh, what a fabulous artist. At the time, what they do is they disparage the people that are actually in their midst, that are producing the work that can actually save their fucking bacon. So the idea that here we are talking a couple of artists, and the important thing in this is, of course, whatever history that we bring to the work that we do has to be predicated, and I said to you in my conversation before, you are an a priori artist in the sense that you have actually tackled the subject in your work that deals with the, for lack of a better word, the culture of death, the civilization based on the hatred of children. This is something that has occurred to me when I look at your work, when I see your work, the soft, the subtlety, the gentle quality. I mean, I called it last time erroneously dusty. It was like it was actually something that occurred to me today when I was thinking about it, that you have addressed this directly, that the gentle quality in your work is in fact about this thing, about children, something you have understood in your own life, that children are hated, are not loved, and you're trying to make a difference through your work. That's what I've understood.
That's right. And I don't, my concerns right now are not about whether it sells or not or any of that. I just, I have to do it. I don't know. I have this theory that if you or I create art, whether it's seen by the masses, whether it's bought and traded and sold and auctioned, the fact that we've actually made the art and done it, it's like a postage stamp. It's an envelope with a postage stamp, and it's sent someplace. It goes someplace. I don't know where it goes, but it's to the annals of history someplace. I'm going to keep doing it no matter what. I'm just...
Now what?
I've never been more committed than I am right now today.
And you know, we've talked about this. It's in the video and before that. We influence each other. We give each other permission. We encourage each other. And even if there's, I think it was Andrew Jackson, he said that a man of truth is a majority. So you have this concept in the art that we have within us the ability to express this truth. And I think this is something that has been ignored, is being ignored. We are peripheralized. We're being put on the sidelines. And there's reason for it because you know, from an art perspective, it's very difficult to exist and survive because the people that are promoted basically decorate the halls of the oligarchs. We don't do that.
Yeah. I think it's worse now than ever before with that,
yeah.
or as bad as Rome or whatever. I mean, you know, when you've got, let's say someone gets in trouble in Ottawa. Well, what happens to them? Or say Washington. Generally what happens is they're sent off to Paraguay or they're sent off to Taiwan and they're given they're given a house to live in and they're called an ambassador. they get him out of the way. And they're never brought up on the pedophile charges, and now they're free to do in Paraguay or wherever they are. They're free to mess with children all they want, and they've got diplomatic immunity. And as proof of this, there was a big documentary in Italy that they played on the television, and it was about this child pedophile ring and making child porn and snuff films with children. And oh my gosh, it turned out to be these Russian guys. And guess what? They were diplomats, so they went back to Russia, and no charges were ever laid.
You're talking about a very dark network, but I want to talk to you specifically about your work. I'm going to end this in maybe 4 or 5 minutes. I want to talk to you specifically about the work that you're doing because we're artists. We're not politicians. We're not socio-economists.
The trouble is these same kind of people that run our governments now and our ambassadors and diplomats and stuff, they're also generally on Monsanto's board of directors.
Right,
They're in the corporate world. And these people sit on these museums, and they're the ones that make choices about what art's going to hang in a museum. So
yes.
It's 1 + 1 = 2 as far as I'm concerned. You and I, people like us, we're not going to be endorsed because we care and because we're trying to say something. So why would they ever want to invite us in? They won't.
We're basically we're a very small group of people. Like I've talked with Kevin Blanche down in Utah. He's an AML cancer victim fighter for his life, talking about radiation, Fukushima, and his work, his video work, is actually a groundbreaking video work because he's transcended with his particular vision into what is understood to be a kind of news feel. You know, when you watch the TV, you see video. He has actually transformed the concept of video completely for me. And what I think you're doing is you've transformed the idea of making paintings, not like Lucian Freud painting some fucking little pedophile kind of feeling painting. He was absorbed by the oligarchs, Francis Bacon, Lucian Freud, the whole bunch, you know, throw him down the well. It's like Ali G, you know, whatever with that guy, throw him down the well. It's like we are now dealing with the most important issue. That is, people hate their children, and Fukushima and radiation is the result of this having occurred. That people from the beginning of history, civilization, it's basically communicating you can just trash your children and throw them over the cliff.
Yep.
That's our work. We're trying to reorient anybody that is actually watching and paying attention. They should look at your paintings. And now what I want to say about your work is, what I've found intriguing is you actually stitch together pieces of work that you work on. You're on the floor. I actually walked over your paintings and you didn't seem to mind.
No.
What the hell is that about?
Because if you walk on a painting until it's stretched and I have it on a stretcher, I use found object materials. I'll use old canvas. I'll use someone's old painting that they don't like. I'll use a drop cloth. I'll use a bed sheet. I'll use a part of a drape. And I have this belief theory that these paintings will assemble themselves, and I'm giving them new birth. I'm rebirthing them. Something that would have been thrown in the trash, I'm actually saving it from the trash, and I'm painting on it, and then I'm sewing it together, because the assemblage part of it, sewing it together, is my attempt, anyway, at what I've done in my own life, which is trying to stitch back together my life and my children's life. And I guess ultimately all children and all of us, we're also ripped apart and fragmented. You know, you look at the internet, or you look at your cell phone or your iPod. There's just so much information coming at us. How can we really honestly, if we evaluate ourselves and look at ourselves, how can we honestly say that we're a whole together person? We're so fragmented. We're incredibly fragmented. We're living in the most fragmented times ever.
You're
we
stitching.
Don't know what's true. Everything true is upside down.
You're stitching us together.
I'm trying to stitch it together. I'm
Beautiful.
desperate to stitch it together. When you walk on a painting, well, that's just more life in that painting. And until it's finished, and then I take care of it. But until it's finished, I'm gonna let life play a part in the creation of the art. And if that's a footprint, then that's a footprint.
And I've said that I rely on this brilliant concept by a fellow Canadian called Marshall McLuhan. The medium is the message. That in essence, your delivery system is in fact the message. And if you are stitching, this is essentially probably a very, if not the most important, one of the most important components in your work. Just the way you work. It's not the subject, it's actually how you make the work.
Yeah.
It's
what I use. It's using something that's disposable and throwaway, which I was and am. And it's that I've got enough self-respect for myself and for others that I'm not a castaway. Them Fukushima, we're not castaways. We're not worthless. We're not useless eaters. That's not true.
Yes. Yeah, perfect. This is exactly what I was going at. And the art of survival, the only art worth making is the art that communicates that we need to survive. And we're way beyond any kind of aesthetic considerations, the way that is being promoted nowadays, that the next little day glow color that can go on a little tin hat or something, we're way beyond that. We're in a state that we need to survive. And the only art worth making is the art of survival.
The art that represents that, because that's the game. We're in the end game, and I really believe that. This is it.
We're in a very pivotal moment. We're in perilous times. I would agree with you. I've made videos based on this concept of perilous times, and there are adversaries that basically try to undermine us and what I call the culture. Again, I'm going to bring it up. We are living in a culture of death that has propagated the idea of children are worthless. You send them they walk at 7:30 in the morning to school when it's minus 20 degrees. Who the hell would ever do that in any kind of normal civilization? It's like, even that doesn't make sense.
That's true. And what are they learning in the school? They're being indoctrinated with a bunch of garbage for the most part. They're not encouraged to think for themselves. The whole school system is upside down as well.
And
How can someone learn something if they're not interested?
And the next thing you have is nuclear power energy destroying the Pacific Ocean, and we're in perilous times with this nuclear crap. And it all comes out of the work that you're doing, what you have not come out of what you're doing. You have exposed this in the work. I've understood this now. This is the genius when I said I intuitively understood your own genius in this, and this is being ignored, and this is why I'm doing this interview. And children are hated, and I believe that you are the primary artist that I have come across that is expressing this notion, this idea, this fact. And it's important to look at the work that you've got, and people need to pay attention if we're going to change. You know, what can I say? Anything else you want to add?
I think that's it. I'm just so happy to have done this.
And I'm going to see you in Montreal, and we'll hook up again, and we're going to strategize. You know what? I think we need to paint ourselves blue and wear kilts or something. For our next show, I think the actual color, a buddy of mine came and said it's not blue, it's called woad. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, the Braveheart had the color of woad. Woad is a particular blue. Longshanks was decimated by Braveheart, well, sort of, but the people that wear or paint themselves in woad are the people that will survive and overcome. So maybe that's the next art movement that has to start, the art movement of woad.
Well, I sure hope there's some way to salvage what's left. I just know everything's upside down. And it's when you said that to me, and I'll just finish off with that, when you mentioned the hatred of children, it almost brings tears to my eyes, because the reality of what I've experienced in my last 2 decades almost, it's pretty frightening how little regard there really is for children. And we are the children of the planet as well, which you pointed out. And yeah, it's we're living in crazy, crazy times.
Okay, you drink plenty of water, and make sure that you get well soon. Great interview, fabulous, fucking brilliant, and I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Great, thanks, bye.
Okay, bye, Stephen.